So, I'm Cindy Nieves, mom to...
Not Cindy Nieves.
aka Brian Nieves. And we're here today because Brian has generously agreed to sit for an interview talking about his experiences. I'm going to get comfortable here, sorry. Talking about his experiences growing up with Asperger's and the hopes it will help others along the way. And I'm still that comfortable, so give me one more second. Okay. There we go. So, Brian, how old are you today?
I'm 22.
22, and thank you for being here. So, as you know, I have a blog writing about raising you and your brother on the autism spectrum. Well, all of us really, but the adventures of all that, called the Snow Chronicles, because of course Nieves means snow in Spanish. And so I posted on our linked Facebook page, hey, Brian's agreed to sit for an interview. Does anybody have any questions? And I got a bunch of questions.
Okay.
I got a couple at work, from a couple of people at work, and just a few random ones of my own that I've thrown in there as well. So it doesn't really matter what order we go in, and we can skip around, but I'll just start with the first one.
Just go down the list, it's fine.
Okay. So, how do you feel self-identifying as having Asperger's when it has recently been removed as a set condition, and now anyone with autism is labeled as having ASD, autism spectrum disorder? There's a strong debate in many ASD communities on this one.
Yeah, I feel like, first of all, it's kind of, how am I going to put this? I think it's a good indication because people with ASD, we're not all Rain Man, you know?
Yeah.
So, before you kind of lumped in, when you thought of autism, you thought of, like, one specific person with one specific impairment, I guess, that, like, holds them back from doing certain things. But that is not the case. Like, for me, for example, I have a couple of, like, idiosyncratic traits that might indicate to the slightly trained eye that I have ASD. But otherwise, I'm, completely normal. Normal, neurotypical. I can pretty much blend in with society as, custom dictates, as need dictates. But yeah, if you can, I guess, lump a bunch of different manifestations of autism under, like, the same 2 or 3 main symptoms, then you might as well. That way, you can really tell, okay, here's who has these symptoms, and this is what we can do about it.
Okay. Well, let me delve a little deeper into that. So, before the new Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM-5 came out, when the DSM-4 was around, so we had classic autism, and we had Asperger's, and then we had, like, PDD and OS. So, like another not otherwise specified label. So, at that point, it was clear that the Asperger's diagnosed folks were at a higher functioning level than the classic autism. So, does it bother you in any way that now there's that designation has completely gone away?
Not particularly. I mean,
now you're lumped in with everybody else, so.
Well, yeah, but the whole point, like, the definition of a spectrum is that it's a wide range of different manifestations.
Yeah.
So even though we fall under the same umbrella, I guess neurologically, with a couple of key traits,
right,
that still doesn't mean we're all the same. It is a spectrum, and there is a wide variety of different manifestations out there.
So you're okay. You're okay with that. All right. So the person that submitted the question said there is a strong debate in many ASD communities about that one, and she also said, "I'm well done for doing this."
Thank you.
How do you feel about people who think autism is something to be cured, like you're broken in some way?
So, in other words, autism speaks.
I have heard that reference before. I have no personal affiliation.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie, there have been times where I wish that, I didn't have this. I wish that I was otherwise normal. But on the other hand, it does help. And now that I know, I guess, who I am, I can know what I'm not exactly aware of. I know where my shortcomings are. And I know what I can do to, I guess, make up for those shortcomings, and then what is just completely unrealistic, completely not doable for me. So it helps me set, I guess, realistic expectations of myself.
So give me an example of something that would be not doable for you.
Probably a lot of customer service jobs, I would say. And I might be able to do it, like, if I had, proper training, but it just takes so much out of me, and I'm completely unable to function socially, especially in a rapid fire manner over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing I can't do that helps me realize, okay, I might be able to apply for this job. I might be able to go to this event. Or, no, I do not want to do this.
Okay, having that self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you mentioned an organization that might or might not be affiliated with curing or fixing people. But the second part of my question is do you feel that you're disordered in some way or just wired differently?
I would say wired differently. I mean, when I identify myself, I don't like to think I'm held down by autism in any way. I like to think I'm a cool, badass, awesome, brilliant, funny, moderately attractive guy who also happens to have autism on the side.
Yes, exactly.
So when I think of it that way, I know it's still a part of my life, but it doesn't in any way define me.
Awesome. So it's a piece of you, but it's not who you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty. Now I'm going to ask you to go way back in time. This question asks about what made you the most anxious when you were in elementary school.
Ugh.
And was there anything your teachers could have done to make your time in school better?
Well, this is kind of tricky because I did, I guess, bounce from elementary school to elementary school with a little bit of homeschooling in between. So I didn't really get a sense of, I guess, stability for a long time, like really up until high school.
Now you were in the same K through 2. You were in the same school.
Yeah, same K through 2. I left the first day of grade 3, and then I homeschooled for 4th grade, joined Alphabet Elementary for 5th grade, and then was gone by the time I hit middle school. I had moved to Maryland. So I guess the thing that makes me the most anxious, and it still kind of is the case for me today, is when somebody tries to use physicality to come at me or restrain me. And I remember that was actually what got me suspended from my initial K through first day of 3 elementary school, was because somebody was like trying to pull me somewhere, make me go somewhere I didn't want to go. Mm-hmm. So I ended up hitting them, and it turned out, and it was the principal of the school, and she basically said, well, you're out. And I'm just like, well, fuck you then. You're trying to pull me places, and I'm just defending myself. Why are you suspending me, So there are places where I think that I guess made me the most anxious. It's kind of a twofold between people in authority trying to physically force me to go places they want me to go, mm-hmm. especially when more recent times than that, I was willing to do it myself. They did it to me anyway, and I reacted in the same way. And then having them think that they were, somehow better than me just because they were older, and I'm just like, I can point out all the flaws in that logic if you wanted me to. Like, I am just as good, if not more competent than you are to run this or to do this specific thing, because I know how to handle this shit. So I guess that's a twofold.
So that takes me in 2 different directions, because I'm not just your interviewer and questioner today, I'm also mom.
Yeah.
So I have the background, obviously. So, first of all, the fight or flight thing. Mm-hmm. That was where you were.
Yes, definitely.
And as soon as they would restrain you, your choices were fight or flight. That was it. So you were already ramped up by the time you got to whatever circumstance had them restraining you.
Mm-hmm. And part of that is like, I realized eventually, and this was probably towards the end of freshman year of high school, that neither fight or flight would be valuable, work. And I'm like, well, if neither of those options work, what the hell am I supposed to do when people are being stupid around me, basically? Because I really have to restrain myself, and it just really takes it out of me when I, can't react in any way that normal people are supposed to react.
So that brings up the other thing I was thinking about when you were saying, they're behaving in a way that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
One of the issues that was one of the most difficult issues in raising you was that you never, to this day, I believe, understood that children are here and adults are here.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You never got that. You always thought you were on the same level. And now that you're 22, it's a completely different ballgame than when you were 12.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard because adults would look at you and think, well, certainly he knows if he's talking back to me, that's because he's being disrespectful and rude. He knows better than that. Where, in fact, I'm not sure you did, because I kind of felt like you thought you were on the same level and you could speak however.
Well, yeah, the thing is, I was not being inherently, disrespectful or anything. I'm just correcting, for example, where they're wrong, or where the flaws in their logic are, or, what's the point of this? And people were like, well, who, or at least this is the way I perceived it, people basically said, who is this little autistic boy to think that he can challenge me? And that, really, I guess, arrogance on their part made me think I was in some way superior, or in some way I deserved to do that.
And whatever that innate sense that neurotypical kids get, that they understand that an adult tells them something, and an adult that falls within their realm of authority, not some random stranger on the street, but mom, dad, tells them to do something, that they understand they're expected to follow those directions, even if they don't agree with them. And I don't think we ever got there with you.
No, we did not. And part of it was, I would say, I don't know if this is a characteristic of Asperger's or just something that is inherent to me specifically, but I would frequently question, well, why is this the case? What's the matter here? What is the logic behind this? Because there sure as hell doesn't seem to be any. And, when something just made absolutely no sense to me, I would just refuse to do it.
And that's the key word right there, is logic, because you've always operated on logic.
Mm-hmm.
And most adults don't care whether...
Most people don't operate on logic. Oh. What? Common sense? This is 2019. We don't need that.
Well, that wasn't where I was going with the comment, but okay, I respect your opinion on that. But I was going to say, most adults don't care to explain themselves to subordinates or children. They're expecting you to understand your place and follow instructions. So that was a big ongoing issue that we had, both at home parenting you and the schools, is just trying to, because I learned early on that I had to be smarter than you were.
Yeah.
I had to figure out ways to make you think that what I wanted you to do was the right thing to do, instead of trying to force it. Because as soon as we got into a battle over control, I'd already lost.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was a kid, I think this is the best way of putting it. Adults tend to think that just because they're older, that makes them inherently more worthy, I guess. And that is just not the case at all, I have learned. And that might not be the lesson that I should have learned, but through a lot of the teachers I've had, a lot of the interactions I had up to, but I guess not necessarily including college. Because in college, all the professors are legitimately smart. They know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But just being older than me does not make you any more deserving.
And I agree. I think most of us, I've tried to make the analogy that everybody has a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about that, in the workplace, even though sometimes my boss asks me to do something I don't agree with, he's my boss, so I have to do it. And that's the analogy that we couldn't quite get to as parent and child.
Yeah.
We just weren't there. By the way, the person that submitted this question also says, thank you both. Looking forward to reading your answers.
Okay.